scent of curing concrete and fresh coffee was my world. For 10 years, Vance and Albright Design wasn't just a name on a glass door. It was the life I'd built with Julian Vance. He was my partner in business, and for the last 3 years, my fiancé. We were the industry's golden couple. I was the architect, the dreamer, the one who could see forests in skyscrapers. Julian was the face, the negotiator, the one who could sell my dreams to men who only understood spreadsheets. Our masterpiece was Aura. It wasn't just a building, it was a breathing organism. A design for a multi-use complex that didn't just passively save energy. It actively generated its own, using biokinetic flooring, solar glass skin, and a revolutionary rooftop water harvesting system I had spent 4 years perfecting. It was my soul rendered in steel and glass, and we were finally presenting it. Not just to anyone, but to Globalis Developments, the biggest firm on the continent. This project would make us. The night before the pitch, Julian kissed my forehead. "It's perfect, Clara," he whispered, looking at the finalized 3D model glowing on my screen. "Absolutely perfect. Tomorrow, they're going to see what I've seen all along." I went to bed feeling like I was floating, my mind already walking through the sun-drenched atrium of a building that didn't yet exist. I woke up to a nightmare. I got to the office at 7 a.m., and Julian was already there, his face pale, his hands shaking. "Clara, something's happened." He pointed to my workstation. The screen was black. The main server. "It's gone. A total cascade failure." My blood ran cold. "What?" "Julian, all the final renders, the technical data. Aura is on that server." I know, he said, running his hands through his hair. "I've been on with data recovery for 2 hours. They said it's catastrophic, a 1 in a million event. But," he brightened slightly, "I have a backup. I pulled the presentation files onto a drive last week, just in case." Relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. "Oh, thank God, Julian. You saved us." "It's not the absolute final version," he said quickly. "It's missing some of your latest fluid dynamic models for the water system, and the kinetic gen specs are the older ones. But it's 95% there. It's enough. We have to go with it." The presentation was a disaster. The Globalist board, led by the infamous Henrietta Croft, was polite but cool. When I got to the energy generation part, the numbers from the older file didn't add up. They were good, but not revolutionary, not Aura. I tried to explain. The final models show a 40% higher efficiency, but without the data, I sounded like a desperate student, not a master architect. Henrietta Croft thanked us for our time. We knew we'd lost. I was devastated. For 2 weeks, I barely left our apartment. Julian was a rock. He held me, made me tea, and cursed the universe for its terrible timing. "We'll rebuild, Clara," he promised. "We'll create something even better." He said he needed to go on a short trip to meet a potential new investor in Chicago, someone who could help us recover. It made sense. I needed to be alone anyway. While he was gone, I decided to face the wreckage. I went to the office to start wiping the dead server and rebuilding our portfolio from our off-site archives. That's when Alex found me. Alex was our junior tech, a quiet kid who usually just managed the render farm. He looked nervous, "Miss Albright, Clara," he stammered, "I have to show you something. I lied to Mr. Vance." "Lied about what, Alex?" "The server. It didn't fail." My head snapped up. It wasn't a cascade failure. The core files weren't corrupted. They were deleted with a specific admin command, and the backups were wiped a second later. It wasn't an accident. It was sabotage. I stared at him, my heart hammering. That's impossible. Who would? I was running a new security diagnostic that night, Alex continued, his words spilling out faster. It was logging all admin activity. I didn't tell Mr. Vance because, well, he was the only other person with that level of clearance. I thought maybe he'd been hacked. He'd pulled out his personal laptop. But I've been tracking the data outflow. The files weren't just deleted. They were copied first, sent to an encrypted IP address. He typed a few commands. I finally traced it. The IP address, it's registered to the private executive servers at Globalis Developments. The room tilted. Julian, Chicago, the older files, the catastrophic failure. It all clicked into place with the sickening sound of a lock sealing a tomb. Julian hadn't just lost the presentation. He had thrown it. He had presented a watered-down version of Aura to make me look like a fool, while he had already sold the real perfect version to Henrietta Croft behind my back. He had sold my soul. "He's not in Chicago, is he?" I asked, my voice a dead whisper. Alex shook his head. His flight, it was one way, to Zurich, near the Globalis European headquarters. A new kind of energy flooded my veins, cold and sharp as glass. The grief was gone, replaced by a clarity I hadn't felt in years. "Alex," I said, my voice steady now, "did you tell Mr. Vance that the data was unrecoverable?" "Yes, that's what he wanted to hear." "And is it unrecoverable?" A slow smile spread across Alex's face. "He doesn't know about the off-site deep archive redundancy I implemented last quarter. It snapshots everything every night. I have the real aura, every last byte of it, time-stamped. For the next 3 months, the world thought Vance and Albright Design was dead, and it was. Julian emailed me from an untraceable address, a pathetic note about how he couldn't handle the pressure and needed a clean break. He said he'd left his share of the company to me, a cruel joke since he'd already drained our business accounts to the last penny. I let him believe I was broken. I let Globalis Developments believe they were safe. They announced their new flagship project, the Apex Tower, with a massive press campaign. The renderings, credited to their newly acquired European design head, Julian Vance, were splashed across every architectural journal. It was Aura, my Aura. They had changed the name and the curve of the roof line, but it was my design, my systems, my dream. Henrietta Croft and Julian Vance were hailed as visionaries. They were even scheduled to give the keynote address at the World Architectural Forum in New York, the biggest event of the year. The day of the forum, the grand ballroom was packed. Journalists, investors, and the giants of our field were all there. I watched from the back row, a simple guest pass in my name. Henrietta Croft took the stage first, speaking of innovation and a new paradigm in green design. Then she introduced the man of the hour. Julian walked onto the stage, looking like a king. He was tan, wearing a $1,000 suit. He smiled, soaking in the applause. He began to speak, his voice smooth and confident. The Apex Tower is more than a building. It is a philosophy. It began with a question. What if a building could live? That was my line. If you'll direct your attention to the main screen, he said, gesturing to the massive display behind him, you'll see the core of our technology. The screen flickered, but it wasn't Julian's rendering that appeared. It was my face, a video file, me in my old office a year ago, drawing the initial kinetic floor schematics on a whiteboard. My voice filled the ballroom. The real question is, what if a building could live? Julian froze. He stared at the screen, his smile locked in a grotesque mask of confusion. There seems to be There is no technical difficulty, Julian. I walked from the back of the hall down the central aisle, my heels clicking on the marble floor. Every eye in the room turned to me. I wasn't wearing a guest pass. I was wearing a custom-tailored suit, my hair pulled back, and a small microphone pinned to my lapel. Henrietta Croft was half risen from her chair, her face white. I reached the stage and faced him. "That's my line," I said, my voice perfectly amplified. "It's my work. Clara, what are you doing? This is desperation, security. It's not desperation. It's discovery," I said. On the giant screen, the video of me was replaced by a split-screen display. On the left, my original time-stamped Aura files, complete with metadata showing a creation date 2 years prior. On the right, the Apex files Julian had submitted to Globalis. The code, the math, the proprietary engineering, it was identical. As you can see, I addressed the audience, the Apex Tower is a direct copy of a design I finalized and watermarked. A design that was stolen from my servers by Mr. Vance and sold to Ms. Croft just 3 days before he intentionally sabotaged our own presentation to her. A wave of gasps and murmurs swept the hall. Journalists were already typing, their cameras flashing. "You can't prove that," Julian hissed, his face slick with sweat. "I can," Alex's voice said. He was sitting at the main tech booth at the back, smiling. "And I am." On the screen, a new set of documents appeared. Bank records. The 7-figure wire transfer from a globalist subsidiary in Zurich to Julian's private offshore account. Then, the final exhibit, the encrypted emails. Henrietta Croft's own words to Julian, a week before our failed pitch. "Deliver the files as discussed. The fake presentation will satisfy your partner, and the board will be unimpressed. You will have your money, and I will have my building. A clean transaction." Julian looked at Henrietta. Her face was granite. She stood up, gathered her papers, and walked off the stage, flanked by her legal team, without a single word. Julian was alone, bathed in the glow of the evidence of his own crime. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a pathetic, desperate plea. I just looked back at him, holding his gaze, letting the silence stretch. I didn't need to say another word. The truth was echoing louder than any speech. I turned and walked off the stage as the first reporters began to shout his name. Today, there is no Apex Tower. There is, however, the Aura Complex, which is currently rising against the city's skyline. Globalist developments, under new leadership after Henrietta's ousting, settled out of court for an astronomical sum and handed over the full rights and construction contract to me. My new firm, Albright Designs, is managing the project. Alex is my head of technology and security. Sometimes I get letters from Julian. They're sent from lawyers, first threatening, now pleading. I don't read them. I'm too busy. I'm standing on the 50th floor of a building that isn't built yet, the wind whipping my hair, looking out over a city that will soon be powered, in part, by my dream. Julian thought he was selling a building, but he never understood. He wasn't just selling steel and glass. He was selling my soul. And he forgot that I knew exactly what it was worth.